Hey guys, welcome back. It's Erin here with Cruising with the Adams. Today we're going to talk about cruising or not to cruise. Is it for you or is it not for you? So I know that a lot of people, when they talk to me, they're always like, oh, I'm so scared of getting out on the boat because you got a lot of water around you, there's no land. What if we get stranded? What if the boat starts sinking? Things like that. However, I am here to tell you that as a person, you should at least try to cruise one time in your life to see if you like it or not, because no one's going to tell you, and nobody can tell you whether or not cruising is for you or not for you. And you're not ever going to really know unless you decide to cruise for yourself. I was always afraid to cruise at first because, like I said, you're in a body of water. Everyone has seen Titanic or Poseidon where the boat flips over, everybody's dead, things like that. Everybody drowns. So when I first thought about cruising, my husband is actually the one that brought it up to possibly go on vacation, go cruising. And I was like, okay, like I'll look into it, things like that. So when he first brought it up, I was really scared to get in the water, especially on a boat, because I was like, okay, we're out in the middle of nowhere. No one really tells you how dark it gets on a cruise ship. Not necessarily on the cruise ship, but like around you. So at nighttime, you can't see hardly in the water except for like maybe what's below, like right below you. Scariest thing ever, but it is totally worth it in my opinion. So I was really scared, thinking, okay, we're out in the middle of nowhere. What if this boat sinks? What if we hit something? What if I fall overboard and they can't find me and now I'm dead? Like in my head, I'm like, oh my God, like how easy is it for me to fall overboard? Because that was my another thought was, how easy is it for somebody to go overboard? And then also I was like, how crowded are these ships? Like, are they super crowded? Are they really like hard to maneuver? What if somebody accidentally bumps me and I go flying overboard? Like, I wanted to see all sorts of stuff about these ships before I was like, okay, cool. So instead of like looking them up, because at the time I didn't think there was really any videos about cruising or anything at first when I first started cruising. Like, I didn't really have an idea of like what the cruise ship like looked like, things like that. So my travel agent was kind of explaining to me like it's really hard to go overboard unless you really want to go overboard. It's not like you're going to walk up to the rail and instantly go overboard. Like you got to watch your step or you're going to go. It's not like that at all. And a lot of people I notice have that fear where they're like, oh my gosh, what if I go overboard? I'm going to tell you, it's really hard to go overboard unless you're wanting to go overboard and either end your life or whatnot, because there are some people that do that and it's really sad. But it is so hard to go overboard unless you're like wanting to go overboard. Some people just get extremely drunk and they get stupid and they don't think about it and then they go overboard because they might step up on the ledge or whatnot. But it's really hard to go overboard on a cruise ship unless you're wanting to go overboard, in my opinion. Some opinions are different, but depending on like the cruise ship, like for instance, like we went on a smaller Carnival cruise ship, and really it's not that crowded. No one's gonna bump you and then you go flying overboard. So that's one thing to think about when you want to cruise if you haven't yet, and you're kind of debating on whether to go cruising or not. I would say at least go for yourself, because it is hard. And if that's your fear, like, oh my gosh, what if I go overboard? It is hard to go overboard unless you want to go overboard. Number two of why I was a little bit skeptical of cruising before I did. So like I said, everyone has seen Titanic. Everyone's probably seen Poseidon. I don't know if you guys have. It has Kurt Russell in it. And then other actors and actresses that you'll probably know, like they have Fiona off of Shameless in it. So basically, I was really under the impression of, what if this ship starts sinking out in the middle of nowhere and no one's going to come to our rescue, so we're all just going to drown and it's going to be like Titanic all over again. In my head, I was thinking that, like, what happens? I was proven wrong. That cruise ship did not go under. Everything went smoothly. The captain knows what he's doing. Like, for the most part, hopefully your captain will know what he's doing or what she's doing. So I noticed that when I got on the cruise ship, it is very hard to actually sink a ship. Like, if they hit, it's really hard to sink that ship. So when after the first day of cruising, like after I got settled and did the first day, like I noticed, like in my head, I was like, oh, okay, I'm safe. Like nothing's gonna happen. It's all good. Like to me, I felt like nothing was gonna happen. I felt very safe on the ship. I know some people have that fear of what if we do sink, things like that. But also you have to take in consideration there's lifeboats, and they all work well. They're up to date. Also, there's other ships out in the ocean that can help you if you were to some reason start sinking, things like that. Because if you think about it, on the Titanic, they did not have enough lifeboats. So at least these cruise ships do have enough lifeboats. So that's a plus. So that was my main two fears of like, okay, do I want to cruise? Do I not want to cruise? I will say that when I first started cruising, we did an 8-day. Because I was like, okay, I'm going all or nothing. If I'm getting on this cruise ship, I'm not doing 3 days, I'm not doing 4 days, I'm going to do 8 full days, make it worth it, and then I'm going to decide, was it worth it, was it not worth it? Well, I will say it was definitely worth it. 100% hands down worth it. I loved it. I was hooked. There's so much to do on a cruise ship, so much to see. I love the ports. My favorite all-time port is Half Moon Cay. I don't know if you guys have been there or not. If you haven't, because if you haven't cruised yet, definitely recommend checking out Half Moon Cay. Best island ever if you just want to soak up the sun, lay on the beach, get in the fresh, nice looking water, no rocks, things like that. So I, like, hands down, had a blast on my 8-day cruise. And honestly, by the first day, I actually forgot all about, like, oh my gosh, what if it sinks? What if I go overboard? Things like that. I gotta see for myself, like, obviously it's not gonna go overboard, or obviously I'm not gonna go overboard unless I want to go overboard. And then also, I felt very safe on the ship. I felt very secure. Everybody was very nice. All the crew members were nice. They were doing safety drills throughout the cruise of, like, in case of an emergency, what's gonna happen. So they were very on top of their A game on, if there is an emergency, at least they know what to do and they're not just gonna leave us stranded and freak out with the rest of us, you know. And there was enough life jackets on the cruise. We had them in our room and things like that. So that's also something that kind of helped put my mind at ease. But honestly, after the first day for myself, I felt that I forgot, like, everything that I was afraid of, and I enjoyed it. I loved it. However, I will say, now this is a big important thing, okay? Not many people understand this, or they don't think about this, but a cruise is what you make it. Cruise, hands down, is what you make it. If you get on a cruise ship, you stay in your room all day, you don't do anything, you don't get out, you just stay and relax, great. If you have fun doing that and that's what you prefer, great. However, if you're gonna sit in your room and complain like, oh my gosh, there's nothing to do on a cruise ship, you're wrong, because there is a bunch of stuff to do on the cruise ship. It's what you make of it. I always like to open up the app, like for instance Carnival, they have the Hub app. I love to get on the Carnival app. I love to see what's going on each day. My husband and I just, mainly what we just do is we just run around the ship until we find something we want to do. Like, we just happen to look on the app and be like, oh, this is going on, let's go check this out. Or hey, let's just go walk around. Hey, let's go to the casino. Hey, let's go shopping. Like, we just have fun. Like, even if we go duck hunting, like, just happen to be walking around looking for ducks, or we go to the arcade, like, there's just so much to do on a cruise ship. And I hate when people complain that there's nothing to do on a cruise ship or things like that, or they got bored on a cruise ship. Well, then you didn't make the most of it, of what you could have done, in my opinion. Now, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but since this is my channel, I'm just giving you my straight up opinion. A cruise is what you make of it. So one thing that I noticed, so I will go on to one thing that I noticed, is a lot of people try to put me down when, sorry, I feel like I got a hair somewhere. Okay, a lot of people try to put me down when I talk about cruising. Like, so, like, they'll be like, oh, hey, Erin, where are you going to vacation this time? Oh, my husband and I are getting on a cruise ship. And then they'll be like, well, I'm never going to cruise. And I'm like, well, why? Like, what's so bad about cruising that you just are, I'm never going to cruise? How can you sit there and say, oh, I'm never going to cruise if you never even at least tried it? Okay, like, some people, like, if they get motion sickness and stuff like that, I totally hands down understand that. Like, getting on a ship probably is not going to work in your favor. I get that. But I always hate it when people are like dogging on cruises and they've never even been on a cruise. They never even looked into a cruise. Like, unless you have a valid reason to dog on it, like maybe you're scared of the ocean, maybe you're scared of big ships, maybe you're scared of water, maybe claustrophobia in case you like get on the elevators and stuff, or like I said, if you have bad motion sickness, that I can handle. But when you guys like come at me, or like in general when people come at me and they're like, oh, I'm never gonna cruise, how can you sit there and say that when you haven't even tried to cruise? Like, unless you have a legit reason, don't dog me for cruising when you don't want to cruise. That's fine. If you prefer not to cruise, that is fine, but don't rain on my parade and don't ruin my parade because I love to cruise. And now I don't go around, like, I don't run around being like, oh my god, cruise this, cruise that, blah, 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 blah. Except for my parents. I do talk to my parents a lot and my husband a lot about cruising, but they also like to cruise, so it works out. But I'm not going to go around and, like, talk everyone's ear off about cruising. Like, if they don't want to cruise, that's fine. That's their opinion. They're entitled to their own opinion on not wanting to cruise. Hey, it's their life, their money. They can do what they want. That's fine. But don't sit there and tell me that I can't cruise or that cruising is so horrible and blah, blah, blah. Because personally, for me, I enjoy it. But honestly, like, I see a lot of people on, like, Facebook groups. They're always like, well, I don't know if I want to cruise. I don't know if I should cruise. I've heard this, this, and this, and this. You have got to go on a cruise by yourself or with family. Like, I mean, you don't have to go by yourself, but you can go, like, with family. Like, don't let other people's opinions ruin cruising for you, if that makes sense. So I was really skeptical when I first started cruising. Like, okay, like, for instance, like Elegant Night. Everybody was dogging all over Facebook about, oh, you have to dress to the standard, blah, blah, blah. You got to dress like fancy, all this stuff. It made me really not want to go to Elegant Night. And then I did more research and found out that, like, you don't have to go to Elegant Night. So for my husband and I, we actually don't do the Elegant Nights. That's just what we prefer, because we just, not that we want to enjoy it, but we're on vacation. I didn't really want to be in a dress running around trying to go to Elegant Night, things like that. Like, we just love to do our own thing. That's just how we are. But for instance, I was kind of scared, like, okay, like, oh, if this is mandatory, like, I don't want to dress up, I don't want to do this, you know, things like that. Or, you know, pictures, like, for instance, like pictures, a lot of people, you know, I didn't know that, like, you can say no to them, you don't have to take your photos, things like that. So I was kind of iffy on it too, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to get my photos taken, I'm on vacation, I know I'm having fun, but if I want a photo taken, like, my husband and I will just take our own photos together, no big deal. So then I was kind of like, oh, do I want to cruise? Do I not want to cruise? And honestly, like, on these Facebook groups, I feel like a lot of people complain. They complain about anything and everything. They're Debbie Downers, and honestly, for my first cruise, I kind of felt like I didn't want to cruise, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get on this cruise ship, and I'm going to have all these people on this cruise ship. They're going to be miserable. They're going to complain, things like that. However, when I got on the cruise ship for the 2 cruises that I've done back to back, it wasn't like that at all. Everybody was nice. Everybody had a good time. Everybody just kind of minded their business, did their own thing, and things like that. So I'm glad that we ended up cruising, because honestly, one thing that I can recommend is don't listen to what other people are saying on Facebook or on other social medias, things like that. Like, if you want to cruise and you have questions, it's always good to ask. I'm one of those that, like, I still ask questions. However, like, I know on some of the groups, there's like a search bar in the group that you can type in your, like, questions, and sometimes somebody might have already asked it. But one thing that I will say is, like, if you have questions regarding, like, a cruise or your cruise, I would just reach out to, like, the company themselves, like Carnival, Royal Caribbean, things like that. I would just reach out to them and ask them questions, because they're going to know the most of it. And a lot of times people are wrong for the answers. Like, they'll answer the question wrong, and they just, not that they don't know what they're talking about, it's just that they might not give the full information, they might leave parts out, or they could be honestly just completely wrong for the question that you're asking. So ultimately, though, I feel like in this video I'm kind of running out of time, and I just really want to get to the point of it, is that, is a cruise for you or is a cruise not for you? And truthfully, no one's going to be able to answer that except for yourself. And I will say that you can research cruises. If you research cruises, you watch videos, if you watch this video, things like that, I hope it kind of helps you. I hope it gives you an ease of mind of like what goes on a cruise ship, like basically how you make the most of it, things like that. I really hope that like you really research, but I will say, I always tell people, if you don't have really bad motion sickness, if you don't have fear of the water, big ships, things like that, at least try it once before you knock it. And even if you only do like a 3-day cruise, like try it one time before you knock it, because no one's going to be able to tell you if you should cruise or not unless it's coming from you. And that's all the time we have today. So I hope everyone has a good weekend, and we'll see you possibly next weekend for another cruise video. Bye guys.